Well, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Kendra. I work for Michigan State University Extension as a community food systems educator. I was invited by some Sea Grant colleagues to talk to you a little bit about farmers markets and selling fish in farmers markets. I'm based at the Grand Rapids downtown market, so I go to work at a farmers market every day. So I'll try and fill you in a little bit about the local food system. And I have with me a food safety specialist, so he will cover the regulations. So just briefly, this is our agenda this morning. We have about 30 minutes. Why should you consider selling fish at a farmer's market? Why might that be something to even put the time in thinking about it? I know a few of you in the room do sell at farmers markets, and I hope you collaborate and talk to each other later throughout the summit. And Tim is going to cover processing, packaging, labeling, all those details that you need to know about requirements for selling. And then we're going to open it up for questions and discussions. So I hope you think of some questions, write them down, and save them throughout the presentation. We'll talk about those at the end. So why am I here? I don't usually work in fisheries. My face is probably not familiar to you. I'm based, again, in Grand Rapids. I cover West Michigan. But basically because I started working on fish when I wrote the Michigan Fresh Great Lakes Whitefish. Has anybody ever seen this document? One. All right, two. A couple of people in the room. Michigan Fresh is Michigan State University Extension's consumer education program in farmers markets. Actually, Dr. Tom Kuhn, he was the former director of Extension. He visited farmers markets when he was at a conference in Kansas City, I believe it was. And Extension there had a presence in farmers markets. They had tables, they had informational flyers. They were talking to people about gardening, about food, about preserving food, freezing, canning, all of those things. And he said, a light bulb went on, and he said, we really need to do that in Extension. We really need this kind of information. We have a lot of these tools, but we just don't have a presence in the farmers market. So in 2010, MSU Extension opened up our kiosk at the Detroit Eastern Market, one of the oldest farmers markets in the nation and one of the largest. In 2013, we opened up our kiosk at the Grand Rapids Downtown Market, and that's where I'm based. And just last year, 2014, we opened up a kiosk at the new Flint Farmers Markets. So Extension's presence in a farmers market is going to be a thing of the future. And we needed a consistent look and feel for our consumer education program. So we came up with this branded label called Michigan Fresh. And so every kind of fruit and vegetable that you can think of that Michigan grows and produces has its own fact sheet. And just in 2014, we started entering meats and seafood, and the lake whitefish was our first entry into the seafood venue. I think there's going to be more growth and development, more fact sheets coming online. If you'd like special requests about additional fact sheets, please submit them to me sometime throughout the conference today. We'd be glad to get the ball rolling on additional fact sheets. But I was the author of the Great Lakes Whitefish fact sheet, and I worked with Ron Kinnunen, which everybody knows Ron, on that. And I also worked with another woman in the room, Amber Main Peterson, who provided the recipes. There's 3 recipes, which are big sellers in farmers markets, and communicating with the public not only about what's special about your fish, but how to cook and how to prepare it is really critical when you're doing consumer education. So this is about a 3-page fact sheet. I have 4 copies left. This was so popular. I started out with a stack like this in Grand Rapids last market season. We're just now in the process of working with our big printer and our big print run for this upcoming farmers market season, so I don't have a whole lot. But if you would like copies of the Michigan Fresh Lake Whitefish for your business, I'd be glad to send you copies. Just come up and see me or send me an email. My email address is at the end of the session. So thanks very much for that little Michigan Fresh commercial. I hope you Google it and check it out and submit ideas. I'm also here because I'm a member of the Michigan Farmers Market Professional Development Committee. We just had our annual conference the past 2 days at the Plant and Soil Science Building. Michigan Farmers Market Association is professionalizing farmers markets, so they aren't really parking lot, flimsy sort of things. They're becoming really sound places of business with rules and structures and set fees and licensing. They are becoming more standardized places of retail. So I just want to communicate that there's a professional association, there's a certificate program for market managers, and this is really a position that can be respected, and you can really rely on your market managers to do a pretty decent job running a farmer's market and marketing a farmer's market today, especially if they're members of MIFMA. I also wanted to fill you in on sales at farmers markets. Michigan is doing an outstanding job when it comes to accepting SNAP benefits, or what we in Michigan call bridge cards at farmers markets. Farmers markets are not for just wealthy, foodie people. They're really places of gathering for all different socioeconomic backgrounds, in all different kinds of communities, from very rural to very urban. And Michigan, as you can see by this chart, has a unique program called the Double Up Food Bucks program. It was for fruits and vegetables, where it would provide matching funds for people using a SNAP card to get up to $20 of additional funds towards fruit and vegetables every time they shopped in the market. And you can see we're outpacing every other Midwest state by doing that. So sales at farmers markets are really increasing, and the growth of farmers markets is accepting SNAP is a really strong case for that. We're also seeing nationwide extremely rapid growth in the number of farmers markets. There's a rough directory listing of the number. In Michigan, we're over 300 markets today. We only had 90 in about 2001. You can use MIFMA's, the Michigan Farmers Market Association's website, which is listed here, to find a market near you. Now, it's not all comprehensive, but it's one of the best listings that we have in the state. So why would you consider selling fish at a farmer's market? Well, based on some, personal viewpoints from some people that sell fish in farmers markets, they believe that it can help you expand your customer base. It's good marketing from people that really care about the farm-to-table movement, that are really interested in where their food comes from, that want to build a relationship with their farmer or fishmonger. It can create more customer loyalty. People, once they have this relationship, they keep coming back. They want to know what else you have. What other ways can they use the fish that you're selling? And it could be a way to maximize profits. The daily fees in farmers markets really aren't that big of a barrier. I think Texas Township in Kalamazoo County, which is a very nice market, they said their daily fee was $25 to have a booth there. And they had, I think she said even on Tuesdays, their numbers were like 1,000, 1,500 visitors through the market on a Tuesday. Saturdays are usually the most popular farmers market day, and they were getting 1,500 people on Tuesdays. And this is just a typical kind of urban, suburban market. Amber May was quite nice enough to email me and give me some quotes. So I asked her, why do you sell in a farmer's market? What brings you to the market in Muskegon all the time? And she said this: we're really surrounded by vendors that are producers of their products. It lends to higher quality selling environment for her. Farmers market consumers shop at the market because they want high quality and they want a relationship with the food producers. The high quality product really justifies a premium price, and the relationships keeps farmers markets consumers loyal. So if you're kind of a people person, and that's another thing I want to talk to, that's really pretty critical to being in a farmer's market. You're going to interact with a lot of people in a very quick time. You kind of have to build trust and build relationships with them. So what do you need to know about? Well, there's going to be an application form. This is not just bring your table whenever you want, whatever day you want, and start selling. There's a formal process, there's a fee process. You have to prove licensing, you have to prove liability insurance usually. You're gonna have to pay a fee probably before. You come to the market, you're gonna get a booth assignment. Probably if you're new to that market, you don't know what booths to really ask for, but you'll pick up quick what booths are most popular and what spots are not most popular. You also have to think about signage and display. You can't just really bring your thing in a cooler, set it on a table, and expect for people to come up to you. You really have to make it an attractive environment that looks like a retail location, something that's welcoming, flowers, a costume, an apron, a logo, your price list. And everything has to be readable. You have to think about the wind, the sun, what can get wet. I mean, there's thought that needs to go into this. Credit card acceptance, I can't say enough about this. Really, most vendors in the farmers market really want to use credit cards. A lot of market vendors are using that kind of square system that goes into your smartphone or your tablet. There's many other kinds other than just the square. But finding a reliable credit card acceptance system is pretty critical. Pricing, you probably want to do some investigating. Do you want to be really lowballing your prices, or do you want to really be highball, or do you want to be comparable with others? Are there other people selling fish in the market? What's going to distinguish you? How are you going to get new customers there? How are you going to train your staff? That relationship building, the giving instructions about how to cook your product is really critical. So you need to have trained staff to be able to communicate that. If it's not going to be you yourself, they need to be able to tell your story and to really build that trust and relationship. And this is my last slide before we get into Tim's regulations part. It's really not about going to a farmer's market for people. It's really about the experience. They want to go and experience something. They want to talk with their friends. They want to see different things. They do want to buy food, but they want a full experience. They don't want to go to the grocery store in and out, typically. Most people want to linger, want to talk, want to learn about where food comes from. And if you're entering that market, you need to be prepared to kind of deal with people that are looking for that kind of experience.
Is your loved one's health failing? Do they need the aid and attendance of other people for their daily living activities? Were they a veteran? If so, it is possible that they are eligible for a special pension called Aid and Attendance through the Veterans Administration that will assist in paying for their health care needs. There are 4 eligibility factors to consider, and you can find out if your loved one is eligible for any of these benefits just by making a phone call to elder law attorney Anna Duggins. She can be reached at 231-722-5415, or you can email her at aud@parmenterlaw.com.
The Village at Park Terrace Senior Living Community, offering beautiful yet affordable 1- and 2-bedroom apartment homes as well as 2-bedroom cottages. Rent includes a wide variety of exceptional services, from daily meals shared in the dining room or delivered to your door, to scheduled activities and social events, to 24-hour emergency on-call service. Their expert, caring staff is there to assist you with all of your retirement needs. The Village at Park Terrace Senior Living Community, where you can enjoy the luxuries and comfort of your own home without the work and worry.
City Glass and Mirror features glass for every purpose, servicing both residential and commercial. Their full-service showroom displays every aspect of what City Glass has to offer: handrails, closet systems, replacement windows, bath hardware, shower doors, and custom mirrors. They even offer auto glass and storefronts to see all they have to offer. City Glass and Mirror, located at 100 West 7th Street in Grand Haven and 631 Commerce Court, Suite 10 in Holland.
I'm Tim Treadway with the Michigan Department of Agriculture. I'm a senior food safety specialist. I have 22 years with the department. I live and work out of my home in Sheboygan at the tip of the middle finger of Michigan. I currently cover 8 counties for inspection duties of food establishments. That covers both sides of the bridge as well as Mackinac Island and Drummond Island. And I am the emergency management coordinator for our region and the senior food safety trainer for our region, which encompasses the entire Upper Peninsula and the top third of the Lower Peninsula for a total of 37 counties. So yes, I'm very busy. Honestly, I thought about wearing a tie today since I was a presenter, but the problem I have with the department is if I put on a tie and tell people I'm with the Michigan Department of Agriculture, they automatically assume I'm one of those people from Lansing. And I do not want to be associated with that. So I put on my normal work clothes, and here I am to speak to you today. I would like to thank the powers that be for dimming the lights up here for our presentation, because I have been told by many people throughout my life, mostly female, that I actually do look much better in dim light. So here's the regulator, everybody says. Boy, this is great. Now we get the lecture on the laws and the regulations. Well, I'm not going to give you a lecture. I'm actually going to cover this pretty quickly. I don't want to get too full-blown into this, but my job as a food safety inspector is to conduct food safety inspections, and occasionally, Kendra works at a farm market all the time. We work at the farm market some of the time. Unlike Kendra, they're usually happy to see her. Not everybody's happy to see us. I tell people I am your worst nightmare. I'm a biologist with a badge. And that's what we'll do. We'll visit the market to make sure the vendors are all in compliance, all the food is from approved sources, the packaging, labeling, temperature control is there. And if you're considering selling fish at a farmer's market, I just want to cover some of the very basics, and then we'll get right into questions and answers for you. It is covered by the following laws and regulations, as you can see. The Michigan Food Law, that's the main law in Michigan that covers all food production, whether it's a food establishment, which is a legal term. Those are the facilities that our department regulates. Those are things like processing plants, warehouses, grocery stores, party stores, fudge shops, maple syrup, honey, things of that nature. Or whether it's a food service establishment, those are establishments that are engaged primarily in selling food for immediate consumption on the premises or elsewhere. Those fall under the jurisdiction of the local county health departments. So it's one law, 2 agencies with separate jurisdictions. The reality is that our department, the State Department, actually has legal jurisdiction over everything. We just kind of farm out the work to the food service establishments, to the county health departments. But the food law is the main law. It adopts some federal laws where you see CFR up there. That stands for Code of Federal Regulations. CFR Part 110 covers the manufacturing of food for human consumption. Part 123 is the seafood HACCP rule, which Ron and Jill are going to talk to you about in about an hour, I believe. Regulation 569 is Michigan's smoked fish regulation, which is a separate regulation under the food law that specifically covers the production of smoked fish. Now, I could give you a few days presentation just on those alone. That's not what we're about today. Just want you to know that these laws do govern the production of fish and the selling of fish, whether it's in a retail shop or a farm market or anything like that. The main point is that all fish sold have to come from approved sources. That means they must be caught by licensed commercial fishermen. They have to be processed in a licensed facility. Under no circumstances can you sell any recreationally caught fish. And that's paramount. We actually do catch people from time to time doing that. They're selling their walleye or whatever they've caught out on their boat. Oh, I can show up and sell this to somebody. No, has to be a licensed fisherman. That's it. And a licensed processing facility. I'll briefly mention one of the problems we encounter occasionally is the licensed commercial fisherman who takes the catch back to their house, to their garage, and eviscerates it or even fillets it and then sells it to the local restaurant or grocery store or whatnot, and they are not licensed to do that at that facility. There's sometimes a misconception that because they have a commercial fishing license, they can do that, and the reality is they cannot. The only time we would not get involved in that is if it's a native fisherman and the garage or building they're using is on actual tribal land. Then we have no jurisdiction. that goes to the tribal jurisdictions. But if it's not tribal land, that has to be a licensed processing facility. Even eviscerating, especially filleting, that's human food. If it's being done on the commercial vessel, if it's a tribal vessel, and it's on the water or it's at the dock, again, that's sovereign territory. That's how the department looks at it. We don't get involved. But otherwise, licensed facilities only. Labeling. Labeling is very basic. The law requires that all packaged food products must bear a label. Michigan's law adopts the federal labeling standards, and it's pretty straightforward. You have to have the common or usual name of the food, whitefish fillet, trout, whatever that is. You have to have the name and address of a responsible party, which in this case would most likely be you as the seller. You have to have an accurate net weight, and I'll explain that just a little bit. If you're selling your fish, you have to sell your fish by the pound. So you have to state the price per pound, the actual weight of the item, and the total price at that price per pound times the weight of the object. And if it's a multi-ingredient item, it has to have an ingredient statement. Now obviously if you're selling a fillet, there's no ingredients involved with that, it's a fish fillet. But if you're selling a smoked fish product, whether it's a smoked fillet or a chunk or a whole fish, you've got to divulge the ingredients in there with the brine. You don't have to give a recipe, but you have to show that it's got salt, brown sugar, whatever you're using in your brine. If it's a smoked fish sausage, same thing, it's a multi-ingredient product, so it does need the ingredients list. Temperature control is one of the main things that an inspector is going to look at if they come to the farmer's market, because obviously you're dealing with a perishable, potentially hazardous food. We are now all relearning the new phrase in the newest version of the laws we use. We're kind of getting rid of potentially hazardous food. Now they're going to time temperature control for safety food. Just means the same thing. But the government always has to come up with something new. They have to reinvent the wheel, so they come up with these new terms. Fish obviously needs temperature control. If you are bringing frozen fish to the market, it has to be kept frozen, stored frozen at the market, sold frozen, has to be labeled keep frozen. If it's fresh fish, it has to be maintained at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below at all times through storage, transport, sale to the consumer. If it's a smoked fish product, the law requires it to be held at 38 degrees or below at all times. If you are cooking fish at the market to give samples, that's also kind of a whole separate presentation that we could spend an hour or more on, so I won't delve into it too much, the specific requirements. But if you were cooking and serving fish, then that has to be maintained at least 135 degrees at all times. And that's all just to maintain food safety. Keeps the bacteria in check. So as I said, I was going to go through that pretty fast. Kendra and I anticipated actually that you folks would probably have a lot of questions about this, so we wanted to leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So come on up, Kendra, and we'll see if anybody wants to fire away at us. Anybody?
There's a...
Oh, Jill, go ahead.
Talk about labeling. That's it's a packaged product that the consumer is self-serving, right?
Yes.
Because you have stuff behind counters that are false.
Right.
And they have no label.
Right. Yep, that's a very good case, or a very good question, Jill. If it's a bulk product, which in a farm market, typically speaking, that's what you're going to have. It's not going to be a customer self-serve operation where I, as the customer, could reach in and select the package. If that's the case, then it needs all the labeling I mentioned. But if I'm walking up saying, yes, I'd like that fillet, and you're taking it for me, then you don't really need all of that labeling. It is a good idea to have your name and address on there, or at least your business name, just in case there was ever a problem with the product or the consumer believed there was a problem, because they won't always remember where they got that from. Some of your consumers will. Oh yeah, I got that from Jill at the farmer's market. Some of them will go, I don't know who the person was, they just had really nice looking fish, so I bought some. So it's a good idea to always at least put your name on there, and not just from the standpoint that we would look at it as regulators, but you're at the farm market for the reasons Kendra mentioned. You're trying to build a customer base, you're trying to increase your sales. Like with any food product, you want your name on that. You want the consumer to take that home knowing who that came from. So that's always a good idea to have that on there.
The Health Hut, located at 3112 Henry Street in Norton Shores, offers a full line of natural and organic groceries, including fresh produce and free-range, hormone-free meats, eggs, cheese, and dairy provided by local farms. Taking pride in carrying products which contain no preservatives, additives, or unhealthy fats, their wide selection of allergen-free foods can accommodate most specialty diets. From frozen desserts and entrees to pastas, baking mixes and cereals, to soups and salad dressings, to chips, candy, and other snacks. The Health Hut. We have your good health in mind.
For nearly 9 years, West Michigan Driving Academy has been providing Muskegon County with complete, comprehensive driver's education. Students spend time both in the classroom and on the road in a state-approved driver's education vehicle with state-certified instructors. West Michigan Driving Academy is the only school in Muskegon that offers both day and evening classes throughout the summer. Accident-free with 150 years of combined experience, you will drive safe at West Michigan Driving Academy.
Benson's Drug Company, the home of Benson's Bottom Paint. Offering an expanded grocery selection, Medicare billing, and diabetes management and education. Benson's now features a Kodak machine, which allows customers to edit, copy, and develop their own photos.
Hi, I'm Brenda Harris with Nexus Realty, turning dreams into an address. I support DSETV.
Yes, sir.
Outside, if you're licensed to raise fish and you just sell them live.
Live fish? Honestly, I'm not an expert on those laws and regulations, but I believe there are specific laws and regulations that cover that through our department, but one of the other divisions for the licenses like the aquaculture and the fish farms. We get, our division, the food and dairy division that I work for, we get involved in that a little bit, depending on if you're selling whole fish, eviscerated fish, or whatnot. But I believe our animal industry division also has some jurisdiction over that. That's an interesting question. I've never heard of anybody selling live fish at a farm market, but.
I believe according to our license, we're licensed in the state of Michigan to raise tilapia.
Okay.
And we haven't been selling it yet, but we're at the point where we're ready to start selling.
Sure.
And I think according to our license, we can import and export, but we have to sell them a lot.
Okay. Where are you located at, sir?
Grant.
Grant, okay.
Someone other speaker I think is going to cover off.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's very interesting. I've been contacted by a gentleman that wants to do tilapia, but they're talking about raising them and then processing them, so, yeah.
The thing is, we found out if you have a hard time finding somebody that'll process them unless they buy directly from you with a contract.
Right.
And actually, they don't want to pay very much for them.
Right.
You get a lot more if you just sell them a lot.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead.
Retailers in Michigan that are selling live fish. In other words, you can take it out of your tank and they'll process it right there in the retail.
I don't have any in my area, but I don't know everything that goes on in the state. We may have some that do that. Just going off my experience and the contact I have with my fellow inspectors around the state, I haven't heard anybody mention that they have a firm like that, but there might be somebody out there. If you're really curious about it, if you call our department in Lansing, there's that word again. If you call them and ask, they can put you in touch with people that could give you that information. Yes?
Yeah, I'm from Facebook Fish Company. We keep our catfish live. We catch, we sell them alive out of the tank.
Okay.
And if people want to dress or whatever steak they do that, they can take it just like they are flopping or get dressed.
Flop them or drop them, right? That's interesting. Thanks. Anybody else? Yes?
Just to take that point a bit further, certainly they're not raised in Michigan. Best example would be a live lobster. You buy live lobster. Of course, the consumer is processing it at home.
Right. Yep, we deal with that, of course, in the retail settings, the stores that have the lobster tanks.
That's your jurisdiction.
Yeah, in the retail stores, you know, like Meijer and places like that. They're just preparing to open in a month a brand new Meijer in Alpena, which is one of my stores, and I was in there last week, and they're going to have a lobster tank there. So that's fairly common. We see that quite a bit. Anyone? Oh, we didn't cover it that well, that quickly, so. Nobody has any other questions? Did you have a question, sir? No? Is that Cam? Holy cow, it is Cam over there in the dark. Yep, I'm Cam's inspector. I've been dealing with Cam for, what, 22 years now, Cam? We've known each other?
As long as you've been an inspector.
Yeah, yep. And you know, and I will honestly tell you, I have learned an awful lot from Cam. When you start in this job, I'm training a new inspector right now. And the job we have is really incredibly overwhelming, especially when you start. They tell us right off the bat it's going to take you 5 or 6 years to feel like you've really gotten a handle on everything. And I remember when I was brand new, I'd never been in a fishery. You know, and you walk into a fishery and okay, they're cutting up fish, but what's this machine, what's that machine? It's the same in a lot of the processors, and even in some of the grocery stores, you go into the big bakeries and, you know, what's a roll sheeter, what's a dough mixer, what's a rounder? You know, you learn all this, and honestly, I'll give credit where credit's due. I've learned not only about fish processing, but the fishing industry itself in Michigan, and everything mostly that I've learned about it, I've learned from the people that I regulate. People like Cam, I have learned a great deal from Cam about the business, the ups and downs, the fishery with the ups and downs. Jill Bentgen I've learned a lot from because I've been Jill's inspector off and on for a number of years. Many of you probably know Ralph Wilcox up in Brimley. I was Ralph's inspector for years and years. I learned a lot about the business. So I have no problem giving you folks credit for that. That's how we learn. We all learn from each other. A large part of our job when we go in and do inspections is actually educational. You know, we don't just say you can't do that. We have to explain why and what the food safety significance is, maybe suggest the right way to do it. We're teachers, and we also get taught from the industry that we deal with. So I'm glad you brought that up, Cam. So.
Well, I'm teaching you about the maple syrup business now, too.
Yeah, I've watched Cam go from this tiny little shack to a full-blown crazy processing facility with maple syrup. So be on notice, Cam. You might see me any day now. Okay, let's wrap up here. So thank you, everybody, for your attention, and Kendra for the great points that she made. And have a great conference.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Niesyto. I'm a Financial Services Officer at Greenstone Farm Credit. Talk to you a little bit today about Greenstone and who we are, what we do, and some of the eligibility requirements we have. Then we'll move on to access to capital and chat about where to get money for your startup or expansion of your operation. We'll move on to the lending process at Greenstone to give you a general overview of what to expect if you're thinking about applying for a loan sometime soon. Talk about some challenges in financing aquaculture, followed by business planning basics and some questions and answers. So Greenstone, who we are, we're one of America's largest rural lenders, headquartered right here in East Lansing. We're the 6th largest association in the farm credit system, and the farm credit system was created about 100 years ago to be a reliable source of credit for the agricultural industry in rural America. And Greenstone is successfully fulfilling that with over $1 billion in equity and $7.3 billion in assets. We have about 23,000 members across Michigan and Northeast Wisconsin, which is our chartered territory. There's farm credits across the U.S., and each farm credit has their own territory. When you borrow from Greenstone, you purchase stock in the amount of $1,000, which doesn't change value, and it is credited back to you at the end of your loan. And that stock pays you an annual patronage dividend, and over the past 10 years, Greenstone's given back over $200 million. For the calendar year of 2014, we're giving back $36 million on March 18th. So that's usually a pretty fun day for us in the branches. A lot of customers coming in and picking up their checks. Greenstone, what we do. So we provide financial services to the ag industry and rural Michigan. For short, intermediate, and long-term loans. So short-term loans would be, for an example, would be something like an operating line, which would provide you flexibility to get you through your operating cycles in your operation. Those are usually secured by short-term assets like machinery and equipment, vehicles, livestock, things of that nature. Intermediate term loans are typically machinery and equipment. Usually they're 5 to 7 years in length. And the payment terms are pretty flexible. We have monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, and annual payments, whatever fits best with your operation. And long-term loans, typically those are real estate loans or construction of buildings, possibly. And we go anywhere from 20 to 30 years on those. We also do equipment and building leases, provide life, disability, and crop insurance, and accounting and tax services. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for financial services if the operator so chooses to do so. We also do residential and country home loans, so construction of a primary residence. If you wanted to buy 10 acres in the country and you don't do any farming, we can certainly finance that. And we also do vacant land loans, so if you wanted to buy some maybe recreational property up north, hunting property, things of that nature. Eligibility requirements. So all farm credits are governed by Farm Credit Administration, which is a government agency. We have strict eligibility requirements for who we can lend to and what we can lend for. So first on this list is production agriculture / aquaculture. This is certainly something that we can finance. Secondly is rural properties, like I talked about previously, about buying 10 acres in the country, even if you're not a farmer. For processors, we can finance these. We can be the main bank for them if you produce up to 20% of what you process. So for example, if you're a processor processing 1 million pounds of fish a year, we'd be looking for you to produce at least 20% of that, or 200,000 pounds yourself. If you produce less than that or none, we can still write what we call participation loans, where there's another bank involved and they're the main lender, and we finance up to 49% of that project. Commercial fishers, this is getting kind of on the edge of our eligibility requirements, but we look at these on a case-by-case basis to see if we can make them eligible.
For years, people have put together photo collages for special occasions. They go through the photo album and old shoe boxes and pull out their favorite photos and put them on poster boards. The boards are a great way of sharing stories, but it can be a pretty tedious job. Well, we here at Clocks, we want to make that job easier for you. So just bring us all the photos and we'll scan them into the computer, and then we'll print out the collages on our large format printer. That way, all the photos will be in digital format so you can share them with your friends and relatives.
In the 150 years we've been in business, many things have changed. Our greatest achievements are rooted in the things that haven't. Years ago, the person you called banker was also the person you called friend. When it came to service, there were fewer layers and friendlier smiles. And banks earned the trust of their customers and community while working tirelessly not to lose it. At Independent Bank, all this remains true today. Sure, we've made advances that help customers bank more conveniently and more comfortably. But at the end of the day, we know that people really need a trustworthy partner committed to their financial goals, dreams, and aspirations. And we've been happy to be that partner since 1864.
The Glenside and Northside pubs, from sandwiches, burgers, and Mexican food to starters, salads, soups, and desserts, not to mention their specialty pizzas like Hawaiian, vegetarian, chicken Alfredo, and of course their grand finale. It's the Glenside and Northside pubs.
So access to capital, where do I get my money for my startup operation or an expansion? First and foremost, I have self-financing on here. So what is your skin in the game? I don't know of any lenders or investors that are going to be willing to take 100% of the risk for an operation you own and operate yourself. So your skin in the game, meaning what cash can you bring to the table, what assets do you have to use for collateral, maybe that's real estate that's free and clear that you can pledge. Next, we have the 3 Fs, friends, family, and fools. This can be a pretty good resource for some short-term capital. If you have some friends or family that believe in you and your operation and are willing to take that risk, and as long as both parties are on the same page in terms of when that money is going to be repaid. Government loan programs, Farm Service Agency is an excellent resource for young, beginning, and small farmers looking to get their operation up and running. They have pretty lenient underwriting standards compared to farm credit or commercial banks. So I'd recommend looking into what loan programs they have out there. And then banks, so farm credit, traditional banks, and commercial banks. I also have equity infusion on here. So if you have maybe someone in your community or someone you know that's looking to diversify their investments, and they believe in you and your operation, they want to invest in it, and in return they get an ownership interest in your operation. That can get you kind of a jump start on maybe an expansion project you're working on. And then grants, and this is an excellent resource if you're able to find a grant, apply for it, and get one. Those are 2 pretty good resources. MEDC has a lot of good links on their website, and MDART I found has sometimes had some grants on their website. So keep an eye out for those. Next, we'll talk about the lending process at Greenstone, just a general overview again to give you an idea and a glimpse of what the overall process looks like. First would be your pre-application work that we'd expect you guys to put in. So what are you requesting? Kind of nail down what you really want. Are you looking for an operating line? Are you looking for a real estate loan to purchase some real estate? Some information gathering. So looking up your historical tax returns and profit and loss statements and your production history. And then business planning. This will apply to most, if not all, aquaculture operations because they are so diverse from one operation to the other. A lender or investor is going to be looking at getting the detail on your specific operation. So once you have all of that information, we'd have the application or initial meeting with myself or one of my colleagues where we'd walk through what you're requesting, talk about your operation in general, and I would look at your financials, get some of those initial questions out of the way, and then I would move on to the underwriting process, which is where we process all the information I gathered. And really the backbone of any credit decision is the 5 C's of credit. So to give you an idea of what a lender is basing their decision on, a lot of it relies on the 5 C's. And so I'll briefly walk through those to give you an idea. The first C is character, and this is where we look at your credit history, your credit score, and then some other subjective factors like management ability and some of those things of that nature. The second C is capital, and this is your owner equity. So your assets minus your liabilities is your owner equity. And we look at both personal and business assets combined. The third C is capacity, which is your repayment ability of your operation and yourself combined. This, I think, is one of the most important C's because if you can't repay the loan, then it's hard to justify moving forward. The fourth C is collateral, and this is what we look at, what you pledge to secure the loan. So if it's a short or intermediate term loan, how much equipment do you have, how much feed and livestock do you have, so we can get that loan up to our maximum loan to value, which on those loans is typically 75%. On a real estate loan or a building loan, we're looking more at 65%, sometimes 75%, depending on some other factors. And then the last C is conditions, and this is where a lender can ratchet up their controls on the loan that they're writing to reduce their risks. So for example, we could put a covenant on to say, we want you to provide us with quarterly financials so we can keep a closer eye on your operation as it's going through the cycle. So after the underwriting process, we're getting an approval or denial, most likely an approval, right? If approved on a real estate loan, I'll then order an appraisal and title work. And title work takes up to 2 weeks. An appraisal can take 2 to 4 weeks. depending on the appraiser's workload. If in that initial meeting, I can gather that this is going to be a slam dunk deal, I'll probably start those right away. For a short-term and intermediate-term loan, I'll inspect the collateral and we'll close shortly thereafter. So timeline expectations for a typical application for real estate would be 4 to 6 weeks. For an aquaculture operation, it'd probably be a little longer because we do have that business plan aspect that we'll be vetting and having a dialogue back and forth with some questions and answers for you. And short-term loans can take as short as a day up to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the request and your financial conditions. So some challenges in financing aquaculture that I see. Number one, unfamiliar, unknown. Banks just don't know where to start with aquaculture. It's pretty unknown in Michigan and across the U.S., really. I think Greenstone's in a pretty good position. With myself being involved in these meetings over the past couple of years, I feel like I know much more than most lenders. So that is a positive with Greenstone. Second, I have risk or the perception of risk. So just for example, I'm sure there's investors or lenders out there thinking, well, what happens if all the oxygen in the water is depleted and all your fish die? You know, how do you repay the loan, or how do you pay me back? So things like that we need to hash out, and you know, a business plan can help hash some of those out. Third is comparability. There's few other commercial farms in existence. I know there's quite a few hobby type farms that you know, we can take a look at, but for example, a cash crop operation, if someone wanted to start a 300-acre operation, I have a lot of customers in that scale that I can compare it to, so I can justify his projections with that and say, we have these numbers make sense. Aquaculture, we don't have that, so there's a little bit more time involved there. Regulations, I think initially this was a pretty big roadblock. After talking to a few of you, I think it's getting a little better, the environment. And overall, I think it's a big positive for the industry to say, hey, we're highly regulated. We're producing safe, healthy fish, so the consumer kind of gets on board with farm-raised fish. Fifth, I have historical financials for startups. So if you're just starting up an operation, lenders love historical financials. We like to look back at tax returns and profit and loss statements to see if you've been profitable in the past. So if you don't have those, it's kind of a disadvantage already up front, but again, a business plan would help with that. And then lastly, I have social acceptance just in general. There are some people out there that think farm-raised fish is a good thing and healthy, and then there's some that think that wild caught is the way to go. So just overcoming that hurdle, and I think over time, that'll improve. So my solution to all those challenges is a sound, well thought out business plan. And I'm confident we can get some of these financed. Business planning basics, just to give you a general overview of what a typical business plan would look like. It's by no means an end-all be-all what I'm looking for, but it's a good template for you to start with. So usually they start with an executive summary, followed by a business description, marketing, operations, and financials. An executive summary is usually written last, but widely considered the most important. If you approach a lender or an investor with a 100-page business plan, they're not going to want to read through the whole thing unless they're convinced in those first couple of pages. Typically, it's 1 to 2 pages in length, and it hits the highlights of your plan. Next would be the business description, so things such as location, size, owners, managers, who your key employees are, things like that. Next, we would have marketing, so who you're going to sell to, what your pricing is, how much you can sell to each buyer. Maybe you have some letters of intent that can help convince someone that there is a market for your fish out there. Operations, so this would be your processes as far as growing, handling your fish. Timelines as far as how long does it take to get the fish from fingerling to saleable size. And best management practices are just a few things I thought of. And then finally, we have financials. So if you're an existing operator, your historical profit and loss statements, in addition to your projections And usually it's a good idea to have the first year projection, a second year projection, and then a typical year projection. So when you're all fully up and running, what can we expect on an annual basis? You also include your capital needs in here and balance sheets, again, both personal and business. So overall, just do your homework, do your due diligence. The more detail, the better. Again, lenders and investors are unfamiliar with aquaculture, so help us help you understand your operation and what you want to do with it. Like I said, I think there's possibilities out there to finance some of these. So do the due diligence, and one last disclaimer on business plans is don't be discouraged if we pick apart your plan. It's a healthy relationship, so we get a clear understanding of what you're looking at doing and where you're looking at going with your operation. Here's some resources I put together. The first one, Ag Business Plan, that's a good resource to look into. It's a nice template for you for different types of operations. And in each section, it gives you tips on what to include in those. USDA and Farm Service Agency, those are the government lending programs that I talked about previously, where their underwriting standards are a little more lenient for young, beginning, or small farmers. So definitely take a look at those sites. MEDC has some good resources for grants and other funding options that you may not be aware of. MSU Extension and Department of Ag and Rural Development. Like I said, they have some grants on there periodically. And then that's my contact information. Feel free to contact me at any time. I'm willing to help out in any phase that you're in. So again, hopefully my contact information will be up on the website, and I'll be sticking around all day, so if you have other questions, let me know. So any questions for me?
We talked about like liabilities if you lose your entire crop.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of like crop insurance out there available for people?
For aquaculture?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. And that's one of the challenges. So most other ag industries do have some kind of crop insurance, right? Yeah.
You mentioned the social acceptance of farm fish possibly being a challenge to getting financing. How would an aquaculture producer address that in their business plan specifically? Like a strong marketing plan, or how would they prove to the bank that that's not an issue?
Yeah, I guess it's not so much of an issue for me as far as the lending goes. I meant that's really more for the overall fish farming.
Okay, so if
but
you're a loan, you wouldn't need it.
it's not a big concern for me, no. Especially if you have a market for your fish. Anyone else?
I think a good example of that is farm-raised salmon, which is very, very popular in the market, is still a very controversial issue in certain quarters, but
right.
But popularly, it's one of the top seafood choices.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a social discussion and argument that has to be overcome. Who knows how you do that?
Yeah. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you. Like I said, I'll be around all day, so feel free to approach me.
Thanks, Mike.
ASAP Auto Sales, located at 2486 South Getty Street in Muskegon, offers a wide selection of reasonably priced used vehicles from cars and trucks to vans, SUVs, and four-wheel drives. With new selections coming in every day, ASAP's lot is always full, which means whenever you drop in, there's about 100 vehicles to choose from. With a wide selection of vehicles, both domestic and import, they have it all. ASAP Auto Sales, 231-830-9000.
Culver's Concrete Mixers, the creamiest way to eat a Reese's peanut butter cup. We put as much care into our fresh frozen custard as Reese's puts into its peanut butter cups. Not only do we use family farm fresh dairy, we also use the best vanilla and cocoa beans. Handcrafting each concrete mixer, it creates a perfect blend. Which brings us back to this, the creamiest way to eat a Reese's. Put the spoon in straight and tall, you've got a perfect concrete mixer. Welcome to Delicious.
Buckwheat Schultz and Associates Incorporated. Investment products and services. For more information, call 799-9889 or 866-799-9889.
Your child's education matters. That's why at Muskegon Public Schools, we encourage early childhood development by providing childcare, preschool, and Head Start. Two-way language immersion and academically focused after-school activities are also an option. High school students benefit from advanced placement classes, nationally recognized athletics and fine arts, and the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. For more information or to enroll, call 720-2000. Muskegon Public Schools, providing the best for every child, every day.
Tim kind of gave a segue. I know there's a lot of detail to this stuff when we get into seafood safety. When you get into a seafood HACCP course, these are 3-day courses, and they're required by the Food and Drug Administration, different state agencies like Tim. He does a lot of the inspection. In fact, when I started doing the seafood HACCP, Tim was one of the instructors. We were a team. We had Sally Eberhard from the Food and Drug Administration. That's how we started the program here in Michigan. And so Tim has his roots starting this in Michigan, working with us. But anyway, we'll get on to what this is all about. First of all, we have small to large-scale fish processing facilities in Michigan. And this is a picture of Jill's facility, and she'll be speaking shortly. And I've got some other photos here, and we got Cam McMurray. You heard him talking with Tim earlier. This is some shots from the inside of Big Stone Bay Fisheries. And a variety of equipment there. You can see fillet machines and scale machines. This is fills up in Marquette. This is fillets coming off a fillet machine. Again, Jill will be talking shortly. She's doing some vacuum packing of smoked fish. And there's different regulations when you get into vacuum packing smoked fish. Everybody's not allowed to do this in Michigan. You actually need a variance for this type of process. This is a smokehouse out in Ludington, Walters Fishery. This is actually Don Kramer. He was with Alaska Sea Grant program. He's a food specialist, and I had him here with part of our whitefish marketing grant several years ago. He did a 2-day seminar for us in Mackinac City, and I brought him around to look at some of the processing facilities in Michigan. And Don was very impressed with what we have in Michigan. He said some of our smokers are probably even better than the ones they see in Alaska. We have a good system down. We have good processes. He was very impressed with what we have here in Michigan. And again, we'll get into the HACCP. A lot of it's record keeping. These are some of the temperature. How do you monitor the temperature? Continuous temperature charts. And when we get into HACCP too, we got to look at it. You can develop specialized products, added value products, special marketing. And just one example here at Walters Fishery is got chubs. Of course, nobody's got chubs now. They're hard to get. I know I see Peterson's laughing in the back there, but
Cam's got chubs.
They're very difficult. They're low in numbers now, but they're smoked now. I think, what are they, $12, $13 a pound. So again, a lot of value-added products. We get into these smoked fish products. There's smoked fish dips. So there's a lot of value added that you can get into this stuff. I got another shot here of Big Stone Bay. This is Cam McMurray's. Again, you can see his maple syrup out in the front from his big maple syrup operation. Again, all the fish they process, all the different species from lake whitefish, lake trout, a variety of different products they make from smoked fish sausages to dips. Well, let's get into HACCP. And basically what HACCP stands for is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. And it's preventative. It's not reactive. In the old way, when they used to do inspections, there used to be a lot of problems where the problems got out. And we used to see all these food recalls, people getting sick with E. coli in the red meat area. And basically, it's a management tool used to protect the food supply against biological, chemical, and physical hazards. And these are the main hazards that we look at when we have a HACCP program. We break them down into these 3 components. It was actually pioneered in the 1960s, and it was actually used for the NASA space program. It was actually developed by Pillsbury Corporation because NASA was finding it very difficult to send products, food products out in space with astronauts. A lot of microbiological testing. When you get into that, it takes time, costs a lot of money. So they actually worked with Pillsbury to actually develop this program back in the 1960s. And it was actually developed by a lot of US food processors around that time frame too, after NASA got on board. Again, it's not a zero risk system, but it's designed to minimize the risk of the food safety hazards. There's 7 principles, and we go over these when we run this 3-day course. And basically what you do when you get into HACCP is you conduct a hazard analysis and identify preventive measures. And what you do is basically look at a flow diagram of your whole operation when you're processing fish. You know all the steps, you know what you're doing. You kind of compartmentalize everything and put them into this flow diagram. And then at each of those steps, you've got to identify, there's control points as you go along, but then you've got to identify the ones that are called critical control points where you can take some kind of action to prevent one of these hazards from moving on, where you could actually hurt somebody that purchases your fish. And Jill and I talked about this as when people first get involved with HACCP, we see people trying to have everything as a critical control point. You want to minimize your critical control rate. Just focus on those main points. Some critical control points may actually take care of a couple hazards at one step. Then you establish critical limits. Some of these critical limits are already established in a lot of these laws, like the Michigan smoked fish law actually kind of follows the feds. It used to be more stringent than the federal law, but there's minimums that are set, like this fish has to be smoked at a minimum temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 1/2 hour internal temperature. There's storage temperatures. These are all in the regulations. So a lot of these critical limits are already established. You get into monitoring systems for each of these critical control points. There's a lot of instrumentation that's used. I showed you that slide earlier. We have that paper chart from a smoked fish operation. There's a lot of thermometers where you might have to get into calibration, where you're checking the equipment. And then you establish corrective actions. And when I get into these classes, I tell people they should know what their corrective actions are ahead of time. If something goes wrong in your plant, you don't want to be thinking about, hey, what do I do now? You should know ahead, hey, if something went wrong here, what would me and my staff be doing here? So these corrective actions are basically maybe a product recall. If something got out and you know where these lot numbers are, where they were sold, you might have to bring it back in. You may put the thing on hold. Your product might be on hold for a while until you do some scientific evaluation, determine, is there a problem here? Can I actually move it out or reprocess it? So there's a lot of things you got to think about here. You establish verification procedures. This may be a record review. These records should be gone over once a week by somebody in the plant manager, somebody who's in charge. Some of the verification may be where you're actually checking equipment too. And then you establish record keeping and documentation procedures. This is important because Tim will visit your plant. You'll have an FDA investigator walk in there, and some of these FDA people will park into these processing facilities for up to maybe 2 or 3 days going through these records. So these records are very important. If you ever got into legal issues too in a court, I think a judge is going to, and a jury is going to look more favorable if you got a nice pile of papers you're carrying in there, all your records, instead of coming in with your hands in your pocket. So these records are very important. HACCP, seafood HACCP has international use, so it's actually used all over the world. Everybody's on the same page. In fact, I just did a seafood HACCP course in Bay Mills this winter. I had Starkist Tuna sent one of their reps all the way from Africa over to this course. And I asked him, I said, did you just come here for this? He goes, yeah, that's all I came here for. So so these people, I've had them come from all over different parts of the world when we run these courses. HACCP's not a standalone system, and you heard earlier during Tim's talk, you get into GMPs, these good manufacturing processes, the SCP, the sanitation controls. This is all part of it. It doesn't have to be part of your HACCP plan. It can be separate. I think it's easier to run it separate with a different record-keeping system. So all these things are working together to make this a safe food product. Again, there's the inspection are basically traditional inspection methods for food safety versus the HACCP approach. And we look at all the food industries now are basically going into the HACCP approach. And basically, if we look at this, is HACCP emphasizes the process control. And when you process your fish, basically you know what you're doing. You should know the best of what you're doing in your operation. You may have specific processes that you're doing at your facility. And then you want to concentrate on the point in the process that are critical to the safety of the product. And then again, it stresses communication between the regulator and the industry. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody takes the same training. This last course I ran, we had probably, I think, about a dozen MDARD new inspectors coming up. So everybody goes through the training so they can all talk the same language when you talk about HACCP. Again, you're dealing with biological, chemical, and physical. It could be like viruses or different bacteria that are in different ones, like in smoked fish. The main one they're concerned about is Clostridium botulinum, which, you know, if a product's abused, it could produce the botulism toxin, which is very deadly. Chemicals, some of these things may relate to if you're in aquaculture, if you're using aquaculture drugs, if there's environmental chemicals. And then physical things, whether there could be glass or metal fragments and process, things along those lines. They should be reasonably likely to cause illness or injury in the absence of its control. When we refer to these hazards, it basically doesn't refer to things, these conditions like undesirable conditions and contaminants such as, you know, insects, filth, economic fraud. That's not really what part of HACCP is. You don't want that in your product. It doesn't look good. Somebody sees a hair in your fillet there or a fly sitting on there. Again, the seafood HACCP regulation, basically any food product where fish is a characterizing agent. So if you're using any fish as or part of an ingredient in any products that you're doing, you're going to need this HACCP course. And I've seen people that are preparing sandwiches. They distribute them all over. I see a lot of those people take our seafood HACCP courses. So there's a lot of variety that can that it affects. It affects importers, processors, both domestic and foreign. Basically, the definition of a processor is any person engaged in commercial, custom, or institutional processing of fish or fishery products either in the United States or a foreign country. It gets into handling, storing, preparing, heading, eviscerating, shucking, freezing, changing into different market forms, manufacturing, preserving, packing, labeling, dockside unloading or holding or fishery products. And there's a lot of people say, well, I don't do anything to this fish. Well, there's one there that a lot of people find out that, hey, you're holding fish here for a while, maybe for over 24 hours or so. That applies to HACCP. We have a lot of these big food distributors also, like Cisco, Gordon's, Superior Foods. They attend our courses. They're holding products. And there's things that can go wrong when you're holding these products, especially if you're doing a lot of the products they're doing. Some of them may be these tunas that are moving around, which have these critical temperatures so you don't get histamine developing in these specialized products with tuna. So holding is actually part of it too. The regulation does not apply to the harvest or transport of fish and fishery products. Practice such as heading, eviscerating, or freezing intended solely to prepare fish for holding on a harvest vessel. The only exemption to that second one is if they're on these big industrial vessels, like you see them out on the Bering Straits that are doing pollock, stuff like that. If they're out there for weeks at a time, they have to have HACCP programs in place on those industrial vessels. But our Great Lakes vessels are out there for the day, they're coming back. They can do heading and eviscerating, a lot of them do. HACCP doesn't apply to that on the vessel. And also exempt is the operation of a retail establishment.
Muskegon Area District Library, formerly the Muskegon County Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, offering public library books and magazines, both fiction and nonfiction, to visually and physically impaired individuals. With their new location at 4845 Airline Road, they can be contacted at 231-737-6310.
We all want to age gracefully and maintain our independence and dignity for as long as we live. Yet, we all fear becoming disabled, dependent, and at risk of having to live in a nursing home. Navigating the world of senior services can be overwhelming to anyone of any age. Senior Resources is your local area agency on aging. Our mission is to serve as your compass to locate needed services such as senior housing, home health care, respite care, and ongoing care management needs. If you are seeking advice on services that will help you or a loved one continue living at home, call the elder care experts at Senior Resources, 739-5858. Senior Resources, we're with you every step of the way. Located in Tanglewood Park, 560 Seminole Road, Muskegon.
24 hours, 7 days a week, it's Ramos to the rescue. For accidents, lockouts, jump starts, tire changes, or gas delivery, the experienced drivers at Ramos Towing will be at your side within a matter of minutes. Whether it's a motorcycle, medium duty, or a flatbed, whatever you need, just remember, it's Ramos to the rescue.
We look at sanitation controls and the HACCP plan. Basically, the sanitation controls are not required to be included in the HACCP plan, but the controls that are not part of the HACCP plan must be monitored according to the sanitation provisions of the regulation. And there's special forms that we have that the processors use. And they fill out those items every day that they're processing fish. And they have to deal with these main points here, these 8 key sanitation points. The safety of the water, that might be only once a year where they have something on file where it may be that the health department or if they're on municipal water, they're using that water supply, they have to show that it's, safe water. But all these other things, they have to be looked at, records have to be kept on those things when they're processing fish. If we look at the legal basis, the FDA's application of HACCP is primarily based on the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And basically any fish or fishery product processed or imported in violation of this regulation can be considered adulterated and subject to regulatory action. And I want to talk about something related to seafood safety and issues related to aquaculture. And there are some practices that are exempt from HACCP regulation if we get into aquaculture. And this, again, deals with harvesting and boxing unprocessed fish on ice for immediate transportation. So HACCP wouldn't be required for that in an aquaculture operation. Live fish hauling to various market outlets, that would be exempt. Custom processing the fish directly for the consumer, does not resell it. And fee fishing operations. But those other ones, on the last two, you may have some issues you have to deal with your local health departments and stuff like that, so you want to check with that. Basically, if we look at seafood HACCP, since 1997, Michigan Sea Grant conducted 23 seafood HACCP workshops in the Great Lakes region. A lot of these workshops, we work with the tribes. They help fund our programs, help us with a lot of the workshops on the reservation. We hold them at their facilities to keep the cost down. And we've actually trained 600 commercial fishers, processors, and aquaculturists over all those years. So it's been a pretty successful program, trying to keep the cost down, keep it local, keep the training in the region so that people don't have to run to the East Coast, West Coast. But anyway, now I'm going to turn it over to Jill. Now we'll look at applications of HACCP.
Where are you going?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
You can talk where you want. I'll click it for you.
Okay. Ron did my slides, so he's going to have to.
We had a seminar at Jill's place looking over the Straits of Mackinac with the icebreaker and stuff. So
I'm going to talk about how we apply HACCP in my facility, and we've been doing it for about 20 years. I started working with HACCP before HACCP became a part of fish and seafoods. It was back in 1994, 95. And I actually took a course down here at MSU with Dr. Ubersex, and it was Better Process Control, I think it was called. And we did a HACCP plan for canned green beans, which really illustrates how you go through a plan and control it. But prior to that, I have a technical background, and I spent 20 years at Procter & Gamble. And my first assignment was applying a quality systems to a new startup of a Pampers product manufacturing facility. and that was in 1972, and then went on to work with a variety of quality systems on very large-scale products like Pringles and Jif and coffee, and saw some real weaknesses in quality systems as they're applied in a manufacturing system. And so HACCP actually allows you the flexibility to address those weaknesses. First of all, you want to go to the next one? When you're developing a plan, and this is just really the points that are really important when you're doing it. And the thing Ron talked about, all the things that have to be in a HACCP plan. It doesn't need to be complicated. The application of HACCP doesn't need to be time-consuming. It doesn't need to be that technical. But there are some key things. First of all, the absolute most important thing, be expert on your manufacturing system, your processing system. And that means know your equipment and know your processes and know how your product interacts with your equipment and the parameters that you're applying at any point in your system. You should be the expert. When that FDA inspector walks in the door, you should know more about your system, more about your products, more about how things work in your facility than they do. And if you don't, you're in trouble. Let me give you a good example of this. We brine fish to smoke, and you have to have a certain salt level in your finished product, which you can't measure very well in the plant at the time that you're producing the product. So it's a verification system, and you have to back off to control the amount of salt in your brine, fish in your brine, the amount of time that your fish is in the brine, the temperature, and then you verify every year that you are meeting those parameters. Well, we changed a cooler from a freezer to a cooler, a refrigerator. And the temperature in the cooler was around 28 degrees. That was the air temperature. And we were storing our pre-made brines in that cooler before we put our fish in it. So we pulled our brine barrels out. We put a standard batch of fish in each of our tanks and put it back in, and then we went to rack that fish the next day, and we pulled it out, and the surface of the fish was frozen. Well, salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water. The fish we were putting in brine was a freshwater fish, and as soon as it hit that brine, it sealed and froze the surface of the fish so it couldn't take on salt. Those are things you really, really need to know if you really know your process, you really know your product. And so you can catch those kinds of things. And also, when you get into an inspection process, you have to know so you can push back so that you can make it work for you. Another example on this is we store our evisceration in basically gut buckets. We bring the fish in, we eviscerate them, and the guts go in a barrel, and the fish goes in a tub. Brought in same time, same temperature, everything. One is stored one place, and the other stored the other place. And we put our gut buckets on one end of a very large cooler, because I have only one large cooler, and we put our raw product that we're going to later process into finished fillets to go out, and another part of the cooler. And the FDA inspector said, you can't do that. You can't store your guts in there. And I said, why? And she said, because they're guts. I said, but those guts are the same age as my fillets. They came from the same spot. There's all part of the fish. So tell me why my guts can't be there and my fillets can. I mean, why can't they be in the same cooler? They're separated by space. They're both covered. What makes those worse than my fillet in terms of safety risk? And they couldn't answer it. Okay, so those are the kinds of things you really need to understand about your product and about your process, including making a detailed process diagram of how product flows through your process. Where is it at any point? Because, for instance, we have a very small facility, and there's a line, there's an actual barrier, a room, that separates our raw product from our finished or ready-to-eat product. And when product goes into our ready-to-eat room, it goes in as a raw fillet in the doors straight into a smokehouse. When it comes out of that smokehouse, it doesn't go back out into a larger room unless it's packaged, sealed. Everything is contained within that small room where we're dealing with finished product, ready-to-eat product. So we have very different kind of cleanliness standards between those two rooms. Also, not all measurement points are critical control points. Ron mentioned that. There's lots of stuff you can measure in your facility: water temperature, bacterial counts. You could go through and you could have a control point or a measurement point everywhere. You really, really want to focus on those that are really important, that you have the ability either to change or control, because that's where you want your employees to focus. You want them to be looking at that data and making decisions around that data. And if they're busy filling sorts of measurement points that are meaningless, that you don't take action on, then they're not going to believe in the system. So it's really important to zero in that. And then your operational control points are not necessarily your critical control point. For instance, the temperature and smoke time for smoked fish is 145 degrees, 30 minutes minimum. That's a critical control point. Our operational control point is 148 degrees for 45 minutes. So we're above that, but the critical control point is below that. You have some margin of safety in there because you will also have two probes, one that is creating a record, and for us, we have also one that is controlling the process. So we have two thermocouples in our fish, and they're not always the same. So you want to look at one and control your process, but you want to look at the other and make sure it's close enough that you're gonna always meet your critical control point in terms of what you're documenting.
Getting this family together is like herding cats.
Simplifying things for families is a priority here at Grange Insurance. We offer a variety of policies through Grange Independent Agent.
Your partner in protection.
The Pizza Ranch, featuring a buffet that is guaranteed to please even the pickiest eaters. From a full soup and salad bar, pizzas and breadsticks, to mouth-watering roasted chicken, potatoes and gravy, vegetables, drinks and desserts, all for just one price. Their menu features a wide variety of delectable favorites. You can dine in, carry out, or have your meals delivered. There's something for everyone at the Pizza Ranch.
Appliance shopping can be confusing. At Seaway Appliance, we make it easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, we have a great selection of home appliances to choose from, and we offer competitive pricing.
2, the staff is friendly and knowledgeable, and our customers can enjoy a no-pressure experience.
3, we have our own professional service department.
Plus, because we're a brand source store, you know you're getting the best deal possible, saving you money.
Where are you going to shop for your next appliance or TV? Seaway Appliance. Thank you for your business.
Seaway Appliance.
When your transmission is in trouble, it is important to find reliable and honest mechanics. National Transmission will get the job done right. Located at 4037 East Apple Avenue in Muskegon, you can call them at 231-788-3244.
Implementing the plan, first of all, you have to take it seriously. If you don't take it seriously, nobody else is going to take it seriously. And what I mean by that is I had an employee, she was filling out the forms, she was making products, she was doing fine. She was young, she was in her early 20s, and she ran out of the standardized form for the smoking process for fillets. And we have a copier there, but she didn't have any paper. There was 3-hole punch paper there, but she didn't have any plain paper. So she went ahead and smoked a batch of fillets and didn't write anything down and just skipped that, okay, that batch and didn't record anything except that we had it recorded on our smoke chart because that was continuous. And I just told her, I said, you know, if you can't follow this, you can't work here. And made it very clear that that was something I would terminate her for. And it only took once. and in a staff of 8 people, they all knew I took documenting seriously. And so my employees do it. Also, you have to train all employees because when you're a small facility or a small business, if all employees don't know what's going on, then they won't know what to do if someone is missing because they're going to cover for each other. Thirdly, you've got to keep your equipment in good condition. If you don't fix your chart recorders, if you don't test your scales, make sure they're calibrated, then your employees will say, well, she didn't care what it is, why should I care? And so you have to really go through and make sure that what you're documenting is exactly what it is, and you're not working with faulty equipment. And I can't say more about, you just have to pay attention to what's going on and give timely feedback. And I yell down my facility, hey, you guys, you got to fill out these forms. You got to do it every single day. You got to sign it. You know, everybody hears that, and I might do it 2 or 3 times in a month of what's going on here? How come there's no temperature marked down for the temperature that you're supposed to record? And it's just a constant reminder. And they'll say something about, well, we need more gloves. I said, write it on the form so I see it. You know, I might not be here for a couple of days. So put it there because I review that and I'll order more gloves. So you'll see all sorts of notes on my my daily sanitation forms about lots of bugs today, the flies showed up. Something like not much to do, no fish coming in yet, you know, and they're dirty, they're smelly, but I know that they are going and writing down every day what they're doing. And second, and I can't state this more, is that whatever you write in your plan, do. Okay, the FDA is going to come in and they're going to say, okay, you've got this critical control point and this verification that says you're going to verify your salt level by an independent agency quarterly. But you're only doing it annually. So you're not following your HACCP plan. Or you said you're going to control to 148 degrees and 40 minutes, but I look at your chart and you're only controlling to 145 degrees for 30 minutes. So you're not following your HACCP plan. So whatever you say in your HACCP plan, do, and don't make it tighter than you need to. Make it what it needs to be so your employees know what to control to. And don't put yourself in a situation where you're violating your own plan because you want it to be tight. How do you make it? You got to make it easy for your employees to understand and document, and a lot of that is training. But what we did is we standardized our batches. We said, okay, every batch of fillets that we smoke is going to be 100 pounds. And our brine tanks are going to hold 50 pounds of fish each. They're going to hold 120 pounds of water. They're going to hold 7 pounds of salt. And they're going to hold 2 pounds of brown sugar. And we've got brine tanks, and we took them and we calibrated them. We put 120 pounds of water in them, and we marked it with a big black ring around it so they knew exactly how to fill it. So they don't have to weigh the water. They can just fill it up to the fill line. And they have to weigh the salt, they have to weigh the sugar, they have to weigh the fish, but they know there's so much fish that goes in each standardized brine. Now they can put less fish in, but they can't put more. Okay, and so we went through and we standardized our sausage batches, our spread batches, so it was just very, very easy for them to grab what they need, have it all weighed out. Everybody knew exactly how to do it. So standardized batches are really really important. Same thing on task. Do it the same way every time. To get my employees to look at the chart recorder on the coolers every day and record it, we had to change what they did. So they came in the door. What they do now is they walk in the door, and the first thing they do is they walk over to the chart recorder, and they look up and they see what it's actually measuring. Even though it's a continuous chart, we document that it's functioning and it's calibrated with what the chart is. And then they walk over and they write it down on their daily sanitation sheet. So they have a standard kind of startup that they go through. And then when we're going to use the fillet machine, they open it up, they look at the blades, they may sharpen the blades. So that's all part of what's in our sanitation sheet. So they've standardized their tasks in terms of how they go about doing their business. And then we have standardized forms for everything. If we're going to record it, it's going to be on a standard form that they have available to them on a daily basis. In terms of documentation, it's not that hard. These are my critical control points. We measure cooler temperature. I have 2 coolers. We have 2 charts. They run continuously. I have 2 smokers. We measure the smoker temperature, time temperature charts. I have 2 of those, and we do that continuously. Cross-contamination, we have a daily sanitation record for both fresh fish processing and ready-to-eat products processing. And they fill those forms out up to 3 times a day and make all sorts of notations. Salt content is part of our brining process. We have a process sheet that details the brining process in terms of the amount of salt, the brine, the ratio of fish to brine, and it's by product. So we have 4 processing sheets, and we do it for each lot of product. And then in terms of labeling, we have a production log, which every time we make a batch of ready-to-eat product, we assign it a lot number, and whether it's going to be vacuum packaged or it's going to be just air packed, we assign it an expiration date. And we also record the weight. And that lot number and expiration date then follows that lot of product, and that's what goes on the package. So the documents aren't that difficult to keep. And then in terms of external verification, we measure our salt content, and that's percent water phase salt, and we also get a moisture on our product. We do that semi-annually. I could probably do it annually. Because I have standardized batches, nothing has changed in terms of salt content. We have time temperature charts. We calibrate our thermocouples annually. We actually have a firm that comes in and does maintenance on our internal smoker, and he also does all the calibration work on all of our equipment. Our weight scales, we calibrate annually. Our water quality, we get a report from the city of St. Ignace annually that I put in a file. And in terms of fish quality, I maintain a list of Canadian qualified exporters because I import some fish from Canadian waters. I mean, they're Great Lakes fish, but for instance, we buy perch from a processor in Lake Erie, and they come out of Canadian waters. I get letters of compliance from those processors I purchase from, and we also ensure that everybody we buy from has a commercial fishing license, and so we know that they're fishing in waters that have been designated as safe and what kinds of fish they can take from those waters, and we check that annually. So we don't do a lot of verification if our processes are in control.
Northway Lanes, 1751 Evanston Avenue in Muskegon, featuring 50 AutoScore lanes, cosmic bowling, billiards, a cafe and banquet facility, lounge and pro shop. Looking for somewhere to hold your child's next birthday party? Northway Lanes can supply everything you need, from invitations and decorations to personal pizzas, hot dogs and fries, to soft drinks, ice cream and goodie bags, even a private party room.
Your vehicle is an important part of your life. It gets you where you need to go. Take care of it by bringing it to Van's Car Wash and Quick Lube. At Van's Quick Lube, every vehicle gets up to 6 quarts of high-quality Quaker State oils, new oil filter, and a free car wash with every service. If you need a quick wash that is done right the first time, then stop by any convenient Van's Car Wash and experience the hand-scrubbed and Simonized difference. Keep your car running and looking great at Van's Car Wash and Quick Lube. 6 convenient locations, 1 near you.
Roll, tumble, jump, and dance with the stars here at Castle Dance and Gymnastics. From 16 months to adults, Castle offers a safe and friendly atmosphere. Located at 1180 Devon Drive, their number is 231-798-8418. Or find them at castlegymdance.com.
Hello, Jimmy John's. I gotta hurry.
Jimmy John's.
That's fast.
Jimmy John's, freaky fast delivery. Jimmy John's, freaky fast delivery.
There are some benefits to HACCP. First of all, it's very cheap liability insurance. Somebody gets sick on your product and they claim it's your fault. I can walk into court and say, here's my HACCP plan, here are my documents, and here's my FDA inspection. And here it is for the last 20 years. And we've been doing it this way on this product for 20 years. And we do not believe that that person's sickness came from that lot of fish. So it's it's interesting because when I was at Procter & Gamble, there were suits. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff that went on there, and that was one of the things that they said. We have the documentation that says this is how we do business. Okay, and so when you go into court and testify, we want our people to be able to say, no, this is how we do it. Secondly, it gives you a higher quality product. If you really have control over your product, you're going to wind up with a higher quality product, a more reproducible product that goes in to the market every single day. And then what I like about it, it allows me to do all sorts of different things. I mean, I look at fish and it's a protein, okay? And it has different fat levels and stuff like that. And so I can manipulate that protein. And if I understand my process and I understand my raw materials and the interactions, then I can write a HACCP plan and I can put it as part of my production record and I can start producing that product. And so it gives me a lot of flexibility. I don't have to go look at a list of state-approved products that I can make or not make. And that was the situation we had some time ago where we couldn't vacuum pack fish in the state of Michigan until we changed the regulations and fell more in line with what was being done federally. So I brought examples of the information. These are our daily sanitation records from last quarter. I do it by quarter. I have a page for every day. So for closed, we write closed across it. So the inspector knows we were closed that day. We didn't forget to fill out the form. We were closed. And I do colored books so they know that this is the fourth quarter. And we do them once a year. We make our books and we have them there. So when the next quarter comes, we just pull out the next quarter's book, set it out on the counter, and it's available. And they're all dated. So there's very little that a technician has to do other than document what's going on that day. They don't have to look where is it, where's the book, where's the form, what day is it, all that kind of stuff. These are all of my HACCP plans. Okay, my HACCP plan is basically on one page. You can get it on one page, and it might be only 4 critical control points for a product. It doesn't have to be big. And this is my verification book that has salt content and water quality, and it goes back probably 10, 15 years of what's in here. So that doesn't have to be very complicated either, but we do it. We do it religiously. And so when the inspector walks in, I just pick up my files and I hand them to her or him, and I just say, go ahead and talk to anybody you want to, walk around the facility, feel free. But you can push back. I mean, a few years ago, FDA inspectors were really big on metal detectors. How can you make sure you don't have any metal in your fillets and from your knives, your circular knives that are cutting? And I said, well, first of all, if I have missing a piece of metal off of my knives, I won't get a nice clean cut on my fillet. Immediately it will shut us down because we know there's going to be a problem. Then secondly, I said, I'm not going to put metal detectors on the end of my fillet machine to see if I have any metal, because then I've got another piece of equipment I've got to maintain, I've got to calibrate. And so we put a line in our sanitation plan that says inspect the knives at the beginning of the day. And we do that anyway. So all we had to do was record it and look at the knives early in the morning and say that we did that. Secondly, they wanted me to calibrate my thermocouples on my smokehouse every day by putting them in ice water. Okay, make sure that they were saying the same. And I said, no, not going to do that, because we'll do that every day, and it will give us the same reading every day, and my employees will say, why are we doing this? You know? And so it'll undermine my HACCP plan for that smokehouse. And not only that, that's not how my temperatures get out of line. We've had this problem, and what we see is it was a dynamic problem. They'd start out the same, but one would react, and you'd see it change quicker than the other. And all of a sudden, they were getting out of whack as they were going up in temperature. And one we knew one was wrong. And so we knew we had to repair that, because I had my employees looking at it at the time they were smoking, because they knew those temperatures were important, not that they put those thermocouples in an ice bath at the beginning of the day. So it's okay to push back on an inspection if you think you're right. The other thing I found is that the younger the inspector and the less they know, the more critical control points they want. Okay, they want you to measure everything. The more experienced and really good inspectors that come in are sitting there saying, let's see how we can simplify this. Let's see how we can strengthen this piece a little bit. And we'll actually help you look at your manufacturing system and say, this is a better way to do it. And I had a wonderful inspector that came in, and he just eliminated half of what I had written down there. That was about 15 years ago. And there was another one out of Minnesota that kind of said the same thing, like, you're doing fine. Just keep track of this.
Established in 1973 by Paul M. Lattis, Lattis & Hoops Law Offices has been a multi-service law firm specializing in accident cases, personal injury, wrongful death, Social Security disability, divorce, probate and wills, and real estate. When it comes to choosing the right attorney for your legal needs, don't choose out of town, choose local legal counsel. It really pays. It's experience when it counts. It's Lattis & Hoops Law Offices.
in the Fruitport area for over 40 years, Grover Pharmacy offers a full line of vitamins, supplements, and homeopathic medicines, as well as a variety of glucometers, blood pressure kits, baby care items, bandages, and wound care products. They carry office and school supplies, Russell Stover candies, promotional and seasonal items, and Hallmark cards and gifts. Grover Pharmacy, they take time to care about you.
At Langlois Home Furnishing in Muskegon, we've been serving West Michigan for over 65 years. Langlois is a local family-owned store with national buying power. We carry the largest selection of mattresses from Serta in West Michigan. Plus, we can help with design ideas. We also have a great selection of the latest top brand appliances and HD TVs. Discover what's new for you at Langlois Home Furnishings on Henry Street in Muskegon.
Hello, Muskegon. My name is Mark DeWitt. I'm the owner here at RPM Automotive. We've been here since 1996. We're a full-service auto repair center. We do both foreign and domestic repairs. Most of our repairs are performed same day. We do everything from AC, engine repair, and computer diagnostics. Feel free to call or come by and see us. We're located on Getty Street, next to the Getty Street Grill.
Hello, my name is Brett Wright. I own and operate Phoenix Crematory Services. Phoenix Crematory Services is located in Muskegon, Michigan, and we work with area funeral homes offering cremation services. We also are able to work directly with your family and their cremation needs. If you would like more information on the services that we have to offer, please contact us 231-733-5200 or go on our website, www.muskegoncremation.com. Thank you.